people are going to protest in front of the stores that are carrying the products. The stores are going to take the product off the shelf, and then the people that are making it are going to be out of work. I mean, this is not something that business does. If you want to do it in your own free time, go ahead. But, business doesn't do that kind of thing. It's not good for business. It's bad for business. It's going to alienate customers, et cetera, et cetera. And, we just had this argument that went on for quite a while, back and forth. And I finally shoved it down their throats. I stood up, I said, "I'm Ben, we're doing it."
All right, Jung Naiv, we're in Berlin, but you're not a Berliner, right?
No, ich nein in Berlin.
What are you?
I'm a Vermonter. I'm from the U.S.
And who are you?
I'm Ben. I'm the Ben and Jerry's guy. The guy whose name comes first.
Is it? Do you have a surname or something?
Oh, you mean like Cohen? Yeah. Cohen. I never thought I would become one of those people who are their last name. Cohen. Yeah, but it's actually Cohen. But
you're not like Cher.
Ben. I am like Cher, yes. You want to see my tattoo?
No. What brings you to Berlin?
Ice cream. Ice. Yeah. I'm co-founder, and these guys are opening up the first shop in Germany, and I thought I'd come down and check it out.
Well, welcome to our country.
Thank you. I really like it. I've been spending some time walking around Berlin and riding around. I rented one of those Uber electric bikes, the jump ones. Mm-hmm. They go really fast. You don't have to pedal much.
What about your shirt? You were
Sea-Watch. That's actually the real reason I came. That the shop is partnering with Sea-Watch and Share with a Friend. What's the name? Start with a Friend. Okay. And then this other foundation that are all working on helping refugees. So Sea-Watch literally rescues them from the ocean, keeps them from drowning, and then Share with a Friend teams up refugees and a person here in Germany who helps that new person learn, adapt.
But why do you guys as a company support these NGOs? I mean, there are no German, big companies that take a stand like that.
Why not? It's just
you have to be neutral. Do you want to lose your Nazi customer base?
I want to stand up for my values, and I think that's what we all need to do as human beings. And the reality of a business is that it's just a big neighbor with a bunch of money, and it should stand up for its values. I think the reality is that business is the most powerful force in our societies, and so business needs to take a responsibility for what goes on in those societies. And traditionally business only cares about its own narrow self-interest, and we don't believe that that's the way that individuals should be in society. We don't believe that that's the way that businesses should be in society. We think we need to care about each other.
But why don't other corporations and companies don't do that?
I think that the traditional business mentality and a lot of the ways that business was taught in business schools. Jerry and I didn't go to business school. I was a dropout. But the typical way that business was taught was that the only valid purpose for a business is to maximize profits. And I think that was, it's false. But the economist who came up with that, Milton Friedman, also talked about the invisible hand of the marketplace. And Milton Friedman was also very in favor of transparency, true transparency. So the idea was that customers could see how businesses really operate and what they actually believe in and what they actually do, and they put that in as part of their buying decision. So why aren't other businesses doing it? You know, they're afraid of offending people. You know, it was a struggle for Ben & Jerry's when we first started doing it. It was a struggle internally.
When was that?
A lot of our managers and the directors felt like it wasn't proper for the business to be taking a stand on what they call political issues. And, you know, because it's just like that was the way it's always been. And, you know, like it used to be that, you know, gay people were discriminated against, and, you know, businesses, you know, certainly were not outwardly supportive of gay people, and gradually it changes, and now gay people are accepted. So it's, you know, I'm kind of saying that now that Ben & Jerry's and other businesses that are also values-led, other businesses that share these values have shown that it's possible for business to survive financially, make money at the same time that they're using their power to address social issues. That has shown customers that it's possible. And now customers are starting to demand it and expect it from more and more businesses. And more businesses are genuinely working to improve the quality of life for people. Some of them are just, you know, kind of putting on some window dressing and greenwashing, but a lot of them are doing things genuinely from a good place. I mean, I was just looking on this street here. There's Dr. Bronner's soaps. I mean, they're my idol. I mean, I think they're doing the best job of any company I know to integrate their social values into how their business works. And, you know, I saw some other guy walking around here in some Patagonia gear, and you know, there's another company that is using its power to address environmental issues.
You mentioned the fights you had with your own managers.
Yeah.
Tell me about those fights, and how did you win them?
Well, you know, I kept on wanting the company to do more and more socially beneficial stuff and taking more and more stands. And they, you know, they weren't feeling that good about it. And then finally, we were coming out with a chocolate-covered ice cream on a stick. And, you know, usually you use the packaging to talk about what an incredible product you're about to eat, how smooth and creamy it is, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, this was before the end of the Cold War. And I said, let's use the packaging to talk about the idea of preventing a war, of diffusing the problems between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, instead of spending hundreds of billions of dollars on the symptom, and, you know, which was, you know, all these weapons that we were building, the Soviet Union was building. I said, let's just take 1% of the military budget and use it for peace through understanding activities, building bridges of friendship between people instead of walls of fear. And, you know, at the time, the Pentagon budget was $300 billion, so 1% would have been $3 billion, which is a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. And so I was saying, let's call this thing a peace pop and let's advocate for this on the package. And, you know, they were up in arms. They said, "No, you can't do that."
Peace doesn't sell.
People are going to protest in front of the stores that are carrying the products. The stores are going to take the product off the shelf, and then the people that are making it are going to be out of work. I mean, this is not something that business does. If you want to do it in your own free time, go ahead. But, business doesn't do that kind of thing. It's not good for business. It's bad for business. It's going to alienate customers, et cetera, et cetera. And, we just had this argument that went on for quite a while, back and forth. And I finally shoved it down their throats. I stood up, I said, "I'm Ben, we're doing it." And we did it, and geez, it seemed okay. Nobody seemed to mind, and we actually got, a lot of really positive publicity on it because it was true news. A business doesn't do that sort of thing. It was the first time that, people knew of business taking a stand against the policies of our own government. And once we did that, and it didn't have any negative impacts, I mean, I think it actually had a positive impact. I mean, the reality is that the more public and out front Ben & Jerry's has been on whatever issue, whether it's on national budget priorities or whether it's on now the issue of racism or the issue of what I suppose I have to call the President of the United States, which I'm really, really sorry about. I'm doing everything I can to get the guy unelected and replace him with Bernie Sanders. But I don't know. I digress. I got confused. You're not talking much. Why don't you talk for a while?
I asked the questions. I'm happy.
Yeah, you ask one question and I, spill on. I spew.
Welcome to Jung Naiv. That's how it works.
Well, you're not doing anything. This is how you earn your keep, man. Hey, what do you do about that? And then you let the guy go. All right.
It's interesting. That's what matters. But one more business question. I mean, you guys are owned by Unilever.
We are owned by Unilever
for like 20 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're about maximizing profits as well. Are they not? Are they fine with you guys taking stands? Are they taking stands? I haven't seen Unilever taking stands.
It's interesting. I fought against getting bought by Unilever. I felt like it would not be, good for our social mission. And, I felt like, if you become owned by a company that doesn't agree with your particular business philosophy, that business philosophy is going to go down the tubes. And, the reality over the course of the years is that, sometimes they've been more supportive, sometimes they've been less, but I would say, probably since the beginning of when Paul Pullman became the head of Unilever, I think maybe that's been 7 years. The company has gone further than it used to go when I was running it in terms of using its power to, work for the benefit of, especially people that are oppressed. Right now we're working on the issue of structural racism in the United States. I was just in St. Louis, Missouri, and the company was focused on helping a local coalition of nonprofits to shut down a jail that has been used to house low-income African Americans that were accused of some petty crime, and they weren't, their income was so low that they couldn't afford bail. In our country, if you get accused of a crime, you immediately go before a judge, and he says, well, you can be free if you put up so much money until your trial comes up. And these guys couldn't afford it, and they end up in jail for like 290 days before their trial, in shitty conditions. And the company's been working to shut that jail down. So I'm really, really proud of it.
When was the last time you were arrested?
The last time I was arrested, was, a year or two ago. I was working with a local organization in my hometown of Burlington, Vermont. And the issue was that the military wanted to base their newest fighter jet at the local airport, which is in a residential neighborhood. There's a military unit stationed there, and this jet would have been 4 times as loud as the jet that was there before, and it would have essentially destroyed this neighborhood. I mean, the military's own study classified the neighborhood as unsuitable for residential use. So I was driving around a vehicle where we had rented this huge speaker and amplifier system that was like what you would have for a big rock concert outside, and we strapped it on, and we were playing the noise of this jet for the people who lived in that neighborhood and driving it around. It was very loud. It was ear-shattering. It was, you could feel it in your body. And, I've been arrested before, but this was the worst one because it was so awful having to listen to this noise as we were driving it around. But, you can talk about the level of noise. You say it's 140 decibels, and, it doesn't mean anything to anybody until you actually hear it, and then people hear it. And, this was right before a vote. It was a referendum on, whether these jets should come or not. And we won the vote. There was a referendum that the people voted against having those jets there.
Wow. I read that you got arrested at a march called Democracy Awakening. 2016.
Yeah, I got arrested for that too. That was a much easier arrest. I didn't have to listen to a loud, ear-splitting noise.
You're a troublemaker.
I'm trying to stand up for what I believe in, and I think civil disobedience is the strongest statement that a citizen can make, and I wanted to make the statement as strong as I could, and that particular issue that you're talking about was about getting big money out of politics. Currently we have a system that is described by politicians themselves as legalized bribery. And so politicians get so-called donations from huge corporations of millions of dollars, and they end up passing or not passing legislation that benefits those corporations at the expense of regular everyday people. So I got arrested to protest that practice.
I get the idea. I just got the idea, like when you say civil disobedience is one of the most important things in democracy. What Ben and Jerry's as a company is doing, you guys are doing like a corporate disobedience because you are not interested in maximizing profits.
Well, right, because we have a 3-part mission that has a social mission, an economic, a product mission, and they're all equal. So we need to focus on each one as equally important. And, we didn't realize it was going to turn out this way, but it turns out that it's profitable too. People like to support companies that have the same values as them. Companies are always trying to get customers to feel good about them. And they do that by making cute TV ads or funny TV ads or heartwarming TV ads. They just try to do things to get customers to feel good about them. And if customers feel good about them, they tend to patronize them more. Right. And for Ben & Jerry's, we try, instead of, kind of making up those little stories, we try to do things that exemplify our values. And what we find happens is that people who agree with those values really, want to support the company. Kind of, as you help others, you're helped in return. It's a little bit of a spiritual thing that happens. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, most of us, I think, believe that there's a spiritual aspect to your lives, that, either it's religious or it's not religious, it's formal or it's not formal. But, there's this idea that the good that you do comes back to you. As you sow, so shall you reap. And what do you know? It's true. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, for human beings and for groups of human beings that happen to be organized as a business.
So, I mean, there has been a lot of talk regarding the future of our planet. And I mean, every one of us needs to live a sustainable life in 2050. We need to have sustainable corporations who do sustainable things. How sustainable is Ben & Jerry's and their products? I mean, are you still using cow milk? Are you still using sugar and all that?
We are still using cow milk. We are still using sugar.
Are you planning on losing that?
We're using as many fair traded products as are available. So it has a social benefit for, what's usually peasant farmers that are growing the coffee or the chocolate or the vanilla or whatever. The company measures its environmental impact, and we're constantly seeking to lower that environmental impact.
So are you planning on reaching zero in 2050 or something?
I'm not aware of a particular goal for.
There's this word climate neutrality that we need to reach in 2050. I mean, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez is talking about it as well with the Green New Deal.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that we're doing it, but I'm just not aware of exactly what the the environmental plan is for Ben & Jerry's in terms of, are they going to reach zero by a particular date?
You guys got in trouble. There was like an organic consumer association that found traces of glyphosat in 10 of 11 samples of Ben & Jerry's. Why is glyphosat still a part of Ben & Jerry's?
We require any of the farmers that are making milk for us not to use glyphosate, or glyphosate, is that the name of it? The glyphosate.
In German, it's Glyphosat.
Glyphosat. All right, let's talk.
I don't know.
Let's use the German word glyphosat. Any of the glyphosat that was found in the ice cream in trace amounts came from, some ingredient that we bought, a manufactured ingredient. And my understanding is that it's, it's that glyphosate is so omnipresent in the environment that you can test organic food and glyphosate will be there. So, yes, there were trace amounts of glyphosate in the ice cream.
But are you guys doing something about it? Are you telling your farmers don't use Monsanto stuff or something?
Certainly our farmers, anyone who's producing milk for Ben and Jerry's cannot use that product.
Okay. How long are you still gonna use cow milk?
I think we'll probably be using cow milk for a very long time. We did introduce a vegan ice cream, and it's actually doing quite well. And, as more people want to buy vegan products, we'll obviously make more of them, and we'll make less cow's milk.
I asked my audience for some questions for you, and the most questions we got were about your vegan ice cream, and why the hell it's more expensive than the rest of your ice cream. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Push vegan, make it cheaper.
I don't know. I don't know the cost structure. I don't know why the pricing came out to be the way it did.
But isn't it a problem that it's more expensive?
If the ingredients are more expensive, that kind of makes sense. But I just don't know what the pricing structure or the pricing strategy, if there is one, was.
These were just the questions from my audience, but I think it's still, like, in 2019, it's still a problem that sustainable products still seem to be more expensive than regular products that are not sustainable.
I have noticed that the price of organic products seems to be dropping in a lot of cases, which I think is really good. I think that when Ben and Jerry's wanted to be, switch to fair traded materials or switch to non-GMO materials, our suppliers wanted to charge higher prices.
Oh.
And, there was a big, pushback and negotiation between Ben and Jerry's and our suppliers. And, I think that there's no longer a premium, although I'm not sure. But I think what happens a lot, and something that I've fought against unsuccessfully, is that, the way business works is that if you buy a product that costs, say, 10 cents more than the traditional version of that product, if the organic version costs 10 cents more, then you don't just pass along the extra 10 cents to the customer, but you mark it up. And a lot of times you're buying stuff through a distribution chain. So, first there's the processor who, say, if you were buying coffee, processes the coffee, and that one marks up the organic stuff higher. And then that person sells it to a distributor, and that person marks it up higher. And then they sell it to Ben and Jerry's, and Ben and Jerry's marks it up higher, so that where originally it was an extra cost of 10 cents, now it's a cost of 15 cents. And, I'm just using that example, and, 10 cents versus 15 cents doesn't sound like that much, but it's a 50% increase. So put it in terms of dollars or euros. I mean, if it costs 4 euros and the other product cost €5, there's a €1 difference. At the end, you're paying, I guess, a euro and a half difference as opposed to just the €1 difference. So, because of the markups, organic, say, ends up costing more than I believe it should extra.
So you were Bernie supporter in 2016.
I was.
Bernie is running again. I heard that you're now a national co-chair of his campaign.
That's correct.
What does that mean? Are you getting the donations from all the corporations?
If only. It's dynamic. It's changing every day. Sometimes I'm going out on the campaign trail with Bernie and I'm introducing him. Sometimes we're going out and we're doing ice cream socials as part of the campaign, and I'm scooping ice cream and transporting ice cream. And sometimes I'm, trying to work with Bernie's staff and try to share my knowledge in terms of how what I learned in terms of marketing and selling Ben & Jerry's ice cream might apply to a presidential campaign.
So, in 2016, there was only one real opponent he had. Right. That was Hillary Clinton. Right. Nowadays, there are like 10, 15 other prominent opponents of his. Why did you support a younger female candidate, for example? Or is it the Vermont connection?
Bernie has been my representative for 40 years. First, he was my mayor, then he was my congressman, and then he became my senator. And I have never, in my entire life, found a so-called politician who's so consistent and supportive of the common good for regular people as Bernie. Our country is run now for the benefit of corporations. You could call it democratic corporatism. And
great for Ben & Jerry's.
Right, which is the,
let's be honest.
One of the things that stands out about Ben & Jerry's is that it's working not just in its own self-interest, but you're right, it is, good for corporate profits. It's great for corporate profits. But what Bernie is talking about, as opposed to democratic corporatism, is democratic socialism and a democracy that works for the benefit of society, of regular, everyday people on the street, which for us would be a novel concept. So he has put his body on the line, literally. He has been creative and bold in terms of what he's been proposing. He's been proposing national health care for us for all 40 years. And there's, he's been in Washington for 30 years, so he understands what he's up against. And he has this tenacity that will enable him to make this huge change. I mean, he's very open and upfront and honest that it's nothing he can do on his own, that there's going to need to be a huge movement behind him in order to accomplish these huge changes. I mean, there's entrenched interests in the country that have essentially been controlling the country the pharmaceutical industry, the health insurance industry, the oil industry, the military-industrial complex. He's taking them all on for the benefit of regular, everyday Americans, and for the benefit of the world, because the reality is that the United States has an outsized position in terms of the world. That it's, for one reason or another, it's a world leader. It happens to have 800 military bases all over the world, which is a pretty strange thing.
It's an empire.
Yes, exactly. And so it has been used exclusively, I think, for the benefit of the United States, and that's not right. It needs to be for the benefit of the world in general that we're a part of. And I think Bernie would be moving in that transformative direction. I mean, I think it's easy to come up with plans, but I've seen the way this guy works for 40 years, and I'm flabbergasted. I'm amazed. I'm never seen anything like it in my life. He's an incredible fighter for justice, economic, social, racial, and environmental. And anytime I have a chance of electing somebody like that, I'm going to do everything I can.
Isn't he too old?
These days, people are living longer and longer. I mean, the thing about Bernie, what? You think he's too old because he's gonna get sick? I mean, I try to follow him around on the campaign trail, and I can barely keep up with him. I mean, I'm on the trail with him for 3 days, and I am freaking beat. And he just keeps on going. He doesn't stop. I mean, someone else comes on for the next 3 days, and I don't know. He's one of these guys who's going to live to be really old and really strong. I mean, you want to elect someone whose values and general philosophy you can support and who's got the track record to prove it. It's easy to talk, but I've seen this guy in action for 40 years, and yeah, I mean, the reality is that any one of us could die any day. We can get run over by a car.
Tell us about why is it important that he has a movement? Why is a movement important? Why just not elect Warren or Sanders and then let's hope Washington fixes it and let's go back to sleep?
Because it doesn't work that way. Because there's just so many entrenched forces in D.C. It's not going to work unless people stand up and are active and are making their voices heard. Active citizens, active participation in the government. I mean, I think most people stopped participating in the government because there was never anyone worth voting for. The government was never meeting the needs of the people. It was always meeting the needs of, the corporations. And I think so. And I think now there's a chance that someone will be in power that actually has the interests of everyday people, and especially people who are oppressed, at heart. But you can't, you go into Washington, and what have you got? You've got, in order to get anything passed, you've got all these senators and Congress people, that you have to get on board. You have all these outside interests that are, giving gobs of money to, the senators and the Congress people to do the opposite of what we need them to do. And it's only when their constituents, only when are pushing on them, only when they keep on hearing from the people they represent that we really want you to do this, only when the people they represent are sitting down in their offices and saying, I'm not leaving until this gets done, that's the only way it's going to happen. You think about those forces, the healthcare industry, putting hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing and PR. I mean, I work with a guy who used to be a PR guy for the health insurance industry. And he talks about how his job was FUD, sowing fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And, that's what they're doing. You talk about getting rid of private health care and switching to national health insurance, a universal national health care. Right. All these private insurance companies that are going to end up, losing a bunch of business, they're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into advertising and public relations, sowing fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So the only way we can counter that is with people power. As Bernie says, they have all the money, but last time he checked, 99% is still a whole lot more than 1%. And if we stand together as people, there's really nothing that we cannot accomplish, that we can accomplish anything we want. That's the truth. That's the reality. But if we are not standing together, if we are not active citizens, if we are not there with him once we get him elected, we're going to be back to ground zero. He won't be able to accomplish anything.
Are you going to create another flavor for him?
I am.
The new one or the old one?
Well,
there was Bernie's Yearning.
There was Bernie's Yearning, which was essentially mint chocolate chip ice cream, where all the chips had risen to the top into one huge chocolate disc. And that represented all the wealth that's been created in the last 20 years that all rose to the 1% instead of being separated, spread around where it should be. And the idea was to eat it by whacking the top big disc with a soup spoon, mixing it all around, getting the wealth distributed, and then chowing down. The new one is going to surpass that one, and it's going to be named, I can give you a hint, I can tell you that it will be named after a body part.
Middle finger.
What's that?
The middle finger.
Well, that's it. Maybe that'll be another one.
Fuck Trump. All right, I have a few audience questions at the end for a few minutes, if you're okay with that. Paul asks...
Is it okay if I slide this item into my...
Your own ice cream?
Yes.
Well, perfect, because then I'm going to ask you, Paul asks, which is your favorite ice cream of Haagen-Dazs?
Well, I must admit that every now and then I do a little competitive research. And, they have this flavor that Ben & Jerry's doesn't make. Or, I don't even know if they still make it. But it was vanilla with chocolate-covered almonds. I thought it was pretty good, but, we have chocolate with pecans, walnuts, chocolate-covered almonds, and dark and white chocolate chips. That's better. That's New York Super Fudge Chunk, by the way.
Brunost asked, what do you offer a fair product that people are not able to buy when they're poor? And they have to pay €6 for a pint. Is that a problem?
Yeah, it's a problem.
Making fair products that are actually more expensive. So,
it's interesting. Ice cream is sold by volume. It's not sold by weight. It's one of the few food products that's like that. And most manufacturers of ice cream whip in 100% air, so that the pint that you buy is actually half air, half ice cream. at Ben & Jerry's, we put in 20% air. Because if you don't put in any air, it's just kind of like a brick. So you're actually getting a lot more by weight when you buy our stuff. And the other aspect of Ben & Jerry's is that it uses a lot more cream. You can call something ice cream and have 50% less cream than we put in our stuff. So, yes, it's more expensive, but it's because the ingredients are more expensive. You can always come into the scoop shop here and get a scoop for less. And you can get together with, a group of 2 to 4 friends and buy 1 pint and share it. And it's fun. And, everybody gets enough. Nobody gets too much if you split it up equally. Yeah, don't just buy the 1 pint and eat it yourself. Share it with your friends.
I always did it wrong. I thought like being alone at home, lonely on my couch at midnight. That's the time to eat a whole pint by myself.
Yeah, well, next time when you're home alone on your couch, lonely, call up 2 or 3 of your friends, ask them to come join you on your couch.
All right, final ones. Vitaly Skrialov says, I'm supposed to say hi. He was working at the Bernie campaign in 2016. You probably know each other. Vitaly?
What, Vitaly?
Yes, Vitaly.
It's a little hard to recognize him. He
was on our show as well.
Good-looking guy, but doesn't ring a bell. But I'm sorry if I don't remember him.
All right, and final question. Igor asks, when is the first fitness or protein ice cream coming out? Is there like a market for fitness?
Protein fitness ice cream? I'm not aware of that being in the pipeline.
All right, that's it. Ben, thanks so much.
Nice talking with you, Thilo.
Enjoy Berlin for the time being.
Thank you very much. You're a delightful host. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for sticking your fuzzy thing in my mouth. Yeah.
You can call that an ice cream as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sticking your fuzzy ice cream thing right up in my face.
Next time we see each other in Vermont, we wanna visit Bernie.
Beautiful. All right.
Thanks.
Hey.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.